The Industrial Revolution began in Britain in the early 1700s, making the country the birthplace of one of the most important transformations in human history. This was not a coincidence. Britain possessed a unique combination of natural resources, economic conditions, political stability, and social changes that allowed industrialization to develop earlier there than anywhere else in the world. One of the most important reasons was Britain's rich natural resources. The country had large deposits of coal and iron ore, both of which were essential for industrial growth. Coal became the main source of energy for powering steam engines, heating factories, and fueling iron production. Iron was used to build machines, tools, railways, and factory structures. These resources were located close to rivers and ports, making transportation cheaper and more efficient. Another key factor was Britain's strong economy and access to capital. By the 1700s, Britain had become a powerful trading nation with colonies across the world. Profits from trade, especially in textiles, sugar, and raw materials, created wealth for merchants and investors. This money could be invested in new machines, factories, and technological experiments. Unlike many other countries, Britain had a growing middle class, willing to take financial risks to improve production. Agricultural improvements also played a major role. Before industrialization, Britain experienced an agricultural revolution that introduced new farming techniques, crop rotation, and improved tools. These changes increased food production and reduced the need for farm labor. As a result, many rural workers were free to move to cities and work in factories. A larger food supply also supported a growing population, providing the workforce needed for industrial expansion. Britain's political stability and legal system encouraged innovation. The country had a stable government and strong laws that protected private property and patents. Inventors were rewarded for their ideas, which motivated people to develop new technologies. Unlike countries suffering from wars or political unrest, Britain offered a secure environment for long-term investment and industrial planning. The presence of a strong transportation network further supported Britain's early industrialization. Rivers, canals, and coastal ports made it easier to transport raw materials and finished goods. Later, railways expanded this network even more. Efficient transportation reduced costs and allowed factories to operate on a larger scale. Finally, Britain had a culture of scientific curiosity and innovation. The Enlightenment encouraged experimentation, learning, and problem-solving. Engineers, scientists, and skilled workers shared ideas, improved machines, and applied scientific knowledge to practical problems. This culture created continuous technological progress, rather than one-time inventions. In conclusion, the Industrial Revolution started in Britain because multiple factors came together at the right time. Natural resources, wealth, agricultural change, political stability, transportation, and a spirit of innovation created the perfect conditions for industrial growth. Britain's early start allowed it to influence the rest of the world, as industrialization later spread to Europe, America, and beyond. One of the most important features of the Industrial Revolution was the shift from hand tools and manual labor to machine-based production. Before the 1700s, most goods were made by hand using simple tools. People worked in their homes or small workshops, producing items slowly and in limited quantities. This system was known as the cottage industry. The Industrial Revolution completely changed this traditional way of working. In the old system, production depended heavily on human strength and skill. A single worker or family would spin thread, weave cloth, or make tools by hand. This process was time-consuming and expensive. As populations grew and demand for goods increased, hand production could no longer keep up. This created the need for faster and more efficient methods of production. The introduction of machines solved this problem. New inventions were designed to perform tasks that previously required human labor. Machines could work faster, longer, and more consistently than people. For example, in the textile industry, machines such as the spinning jenny allowed one worker to spin multiple threads at the same time. This dramatically increased output and reduced production time. The shift to machines also led to the rise of factories. Large machines were expensive and required power sources like water or steam, so they were placed in centralized locations. Workers had to leave their homes and come to factories to operate these machines. This marked a major change in work culture, as people now followed fixed schedules, worked long hours, and were supervised by factory owners. Machine production brought many economic advantages. Goods could be produced in large quantities at lower costs, making them cheaper and more accessible to the public. Industries expanded rapidly, profits increased, and markets grew. This mass production helped fuel economic growth and strengthened national economies, especially in industrialized countries. However, the shift from hand tools to machines also had negative effects. Skilled craftsmen lost their jobs because machines could do the same work faster and cheaper. Many workers were forced to accept low wages and harsh working conditions. Machines increased productivity, but factory owners often benefited more than laborers. This created social inequality and dissatisfaction among workers. Despite these challenges, machine-based production laid the foundation for modern industry. It encouraged innovation, technological development, and further mechanization. Over time, machines became more advanced, leading to improvements in transportation, communication, and manufacturing. In conclusion, the shift from hand tools to machines was a turning point in human history. It transformed how goods were produced, changed the nature of work, and reshaped societies. While it brought both benefits and hardships, this shift was essential to the development of the modern industrial world. The invention of the steam engine was one of the most revolutionary developments of the Industrial Revolution. It changed the way energy was produced and used, allowing machines to operate with greater power, efficiency, and independence from natural forces like wind and water. The steam engine became the driving force behind industrial growth in the 1700s and beyond. Before the steam engine, most machines relied on human or animal power. Some factories used water wheels, but these could only operate near rivers and were affected by weather conditions. This limited where industries could be built and how much they could produce. As industrial demand increased, a more reliable and powerful energy source was needed. Early steam engines were developed to solve practical problems, especially in coal mining. Mines often flooded, making it difficult to extract coal. In the early 1700s, Thomas Newcomen created a basic steam engine that was used to pump water out of mines. Although it was inefficient, it proved that steam power could be used for heavy work. The real breakthrough came with James Watt, who greatly improved the steam engine in the 1760s and 1770s. Watt introduced key innovations such as the separate condenser, which made the engine far more efficient and reduced fuel consumption. His improvements allowed steam engines to be used in many different industries, not just mining. With Watt's engine, factories no longer needed to be built near rivers. Steam engines could be installed anywhere, as long as coal was available. This freedom led to the rapid growth of factories and urban centers. Industries such as textiles, iron production, and manufacturing expanded quickly because steam power could run machines continuously and at high speeds. The steam engine also revolutionized transportation. Steam-powered locomotives transformed land travel by making it faster, cheaper, and more reliable. Railways connected cities, factories, and markets, helping goods and people move efficiently. Steam-powered ships improved sea travel and trade, strengthening global connections and expanding international commerce. Despite its many advantages, the steam engine had social and environmental impacts. Increased coal use led to air pollution and health problems in industrial cities. Factories powered by steam often demanded long working hours under difficult conditions. However, over time, technological improvements and labor reforms helped reduce some of these problems. In the long term, the steam engine laid the foundation for modern energy systems. It inspired further inventions and innovations, eventually leading to electricity, internal combustion engines, and modern industrial machinery. Steam power marked humanity's shift toward large-scale mechanized production. In conclusion, the invention of the steam engine was a turning point in the Industrial Revolution. It provided a powerful, reliable source of energy that transformed industry, transportation, and society. Without the steam engine, the rapid industrial growth of the modern world would not have been possible. The growth of factories was a major outcome of the Industrial Revolution and played a key role in transforming how goods were produced. Before the 1700s, most manufacturing was done in homes or small workshops using hand tools. This system, known as the cottage industry, was slow and limited in scale. The Industrial Revolution replaced this method with large factories that could produce goods in massive quantities. Factories became possible because of new machines and power sources. Large machines such as spinning frames, power looms, and steam engines were expensive and required significant space and energy. It was not practical to place them in individual homes. As a result, factory owners built large buildings where machines could be installed and operated efficiently under one roof. The factory system allowed for division of labor, which increased productivity. Instead of one worker making an entire product, each worker performed a specific task repeatedly. This specialization reduced training time, increased speed, and lowered production costs. Factory owners could now produce more goods in less time, leading to higher profits and economic growth. The rise of factories also changed the nature of work. Workers had to follow strict schedules, often working 12 to 16 hours a day. Factory bells replaced natural daylight as the guide for daily routines. Discipline, timekeeping, and supervision became central parts of working life. This was a major adjustment for people who were used to flexible working hours at home. Factories attracted large numbers of workers, leading to rapid urbanization. People moved from rural areas to cities in search of employment. Industrial towns grew quickly, often without proper planning. Housing shortages, overcrowding, poor sanitation, and lack of clean water became serious problems. Many factory workers lived in unhealthy and unsafe conditions. Working conditions inside factories were often harsh and dangerous. Machines had few safety measures, leading to frequent accidents. Women and children were employed because they could be paid lower wages. Child labor became common, with children working long hours in unsafe environments. These conditions later led to social reform movements and labor laws. Despite these problems, factories played a crucial role in economic development. They increased production, lowered prices, and made goods more accessible to the general population. Industries expanded, trade grew, and national economies strengthened. Over time, factory production helped raise living standards and supported technological progress. In conclusion, the growth of factories marked a major shift in industrial production. While the factory system brought serious social challenges, it also created the foundation for modern manufacturing and economic growth. Factories became the center of industrial society and shaped the modern world. The textile industry was at the heart of the Industrial Revolution and was one of the first industries to experience major transformation. Before the 1700s, cloth production was done by hand in homes and small workshops. Spinning thread and weaving fabric were slow processes that required great skill and time. As demand for cloth increased, traditional methods could no longer meet the needs of growing populations. The Industrial Revolution introduced new machines that completely changed textile production. One of the earliest inventions was the spinning jenny, Developed by James Hargreaves in 1764, this machine allowed one worker to spin multiple threads at the same time, greatly increasing output. Soon after, Richard Arkwright's water frame used water power to spin stronger and finer thread, making production faster and more reliable. Another major breakthrough was the power loom, invented by Edmund Cartwright. This machine mechanized the weaving process, which had previously been done entirely by hand. With spinning and weaving both mechanized, cloth could now be produced on a large scale in factories. Production times were reduced from weeks to hours, and costs dropped significantly. These inventions led to the rise of textile factories, especially in Britain. Large buildings were built near rivers, and later powered by steam engines. Factory owners invested heavily in machines, while workers were hired to operate them. This marked the shift from home-based textile work to factory-based production. The textile revolution had major economic effects. Cloth became cheaper and more widely available, improving everyday life for many people. The textile industry became one of the most profitable sectors of the economy and played a key role in Britain's economic growth. It also increased demand for raw materials like cotton, strengthening trade with colonies and other countries. However, the rapid growth of the textile industry also caused social problems. Skilled handloom weavers lost their livelihoods because machines could do the same work faster and cheaper. Many workers, including women and children, were employed in textile factories under harsh conditions. Long hours, low wages, and unsafe environments were common, leading to widespread worker dissatisfaction. Over time, these conditions led to labor reforms. Public awareness and worker protests forced governments to introduce laws to limit working hours, improve safety, and restrict child labor. These reforms helped shape modern labor rights and workplace standards. In conclusion, the revolution in the textile industry was a turning point in industrial history. It demonstrated the power of machines, transformed production methods, and set the pattern for industrialization in other sectors. While it brought economic growth and cheaper goods, it also highlighted the need for social reform and worker protection. Urbanization was one of the most visible and dramatic effects of the Industrial Revolution. As factories grew and industrial production expanded, millions of people moved from rural villages to towns and cities in search of work. This mass movement of people permanently changed the social and physical landscape of industrial countries. Before the Industrial Revolution, most people lived in rural areas and worked in agriculture or small home-based industries. Life in villages was slower, and communities were closely connected. However, the rise of factories created a huge demand for labor in cities. Factories offered regular wages, which attracted farmers and rural workers who had lost jobs due to agricultural mechanization. Industrial cities grew rapidly, and often without planning. Housing was built quickly to accommodate the growing population, but it was usually overcrowded and poorly constructed. Many workers lived in small, cramped houses or apartments with little ventilation. Entire families often shared a single room. Sanitation systems were inadequate, and clean drinking water was scarce. These conditions led to serious health problems. Diseases such as cholera, typhoid, and tuberculosis spread quickly in crowded neighborhoods. Poor waste disposal and polluted water sources worsened the situation. Life expectancy in industrial cities was often much lower than in rural areas during the early stages of urbanization. Urbanization also brought major social changes. Traditional village relationships were replaced by more anonymous city life. People from different regions and backgrounds lived close together, leading to cultural mixing but also social tension. New social classes emerged, particularly the industrial working class and the wealthy factory-owning class. Despite its challenges, urbanization created new opportunities. Cities became centers of innovation, education, and cultural development. Public institutions such as schools, hospitals, and libraries gradually developed. Improved transportation systems, including roads and railways, connected cities and supported economic growth. Over time, governments and reformers began to address urban problems. Public health reforms were introduced to improve sanitation, clean water supplies, and housing conditions. City planning became more organized, and living standards slowly improved. These reforms laid the groundwork for modern urban life. Urbanization also changed family structures and lifestyles. More women entered the workforce, and children increasingly attended schools rather than working full-time. Although early urban life was harsh, it eventually led to greater social mobility and access to services. In conclusion, urbanization during the Industrial Revolution transformed societies in profound ways. While it initially brought overcrowding, disease, and hardship, it also created the foundation for modern cities. The movement of people to urban centers reshaped economies, cultures, and daily life, making urbanization a key feature of the industrial age. Poor working conditions were one of the darkest aspects of the Industrial Revolution. As factories expanded rapidly, the focus of factory owners was mainly on increasing production and profit, often at the expense of workers' health, safety, and well-being. Millions of men, women, and children were forced to work in harsh and dangerous environments. Factory workers usually worked long hours, often between 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. There were few breaks, and workers could be punished or fined for arriving late or slowing down. Unlike today, there were no labor laws to limit working hours or protect workers' rights. Employment was insecure, and workers could be fired at any time without warning. The factory environment itself was extremely dangerous. Machines were large, fast-moving, and had no safety guards. Accidents such as crushed limbs, broken bones, and even deaths were common. In textile factories, workers, especially children, were forced to crawl under running machines to clean or fix them, putting their lives at serious risk. Child labor was widespread during the Industrial Revolution. Children were hired because they were small, easy to control, and could be paid much less than adults. Many children worked in factories, mines, and mills from a very young age. They faced physical exhaustion, injuries, and lack of education, which affected their future lives. Working conditions were also unhealthy due to poor ventilation and pollution. Factories were filled with dust, smoke, and chemical fumes that caused respiratory diseases. Coal-powered machines released thick smoke, making the air toxic. Workers often suffered from chronic illnesses, including lung diseases and eye problems. Wages were generally very low, barely enough to survive. Entire families had to work, including women and children, just to meet basic needs. Despite working long hours, many factory workers lived in poverty. This economic hardship led to frustration, anger, and a sense of injustice among the working class. Over time, poor working conditions led to worker protests and reform movements. Labor unions began to form, demanding better wages, shorter hours, and safer workplaces. Writers, journalists, and social reformers exposed factory abuses, raising public awareness. Eventually, governments responded by introducing labor laws. Laws were passed to limit child labor, reduce working hours, and improve factory safety. Although these reforms came slowly, they marked the beginning of modern labor rights and workplace protections. In conclusion, poor working conditions were a serious human cost of the Industrial Revolution. While industrialization brought economic growth and technological progress, it also caused suffering for millions of workers. These harsh conditions played a crucial role in shaping labor laws and workers' rights that protect people today. The Industrial Revolution laid the foundation of the modern world by completely transforming how people live, work, and interact with technology. Although it began in the 1700s, its effects continue to shape societies today. This period marked the shift from traditional agricultural economies to modern industrial and technological societies. One of the most important outcomes of the Industrial Revolution was technological advancement. Machines, factories, and new energy sources like steam power encouraged continuous innovation. Over time, these developments led to electricity, modern machinery, automobiles, and digital technology. The idea that technology could continuously improve productivity became a central feature of modern life. The Industrial Revolution also transformed economic systems. Mass production lowered the cost of goods, making products more affordable and widely available. Industries expanded, global trade increased, and capitalism became the dominant economic system. Businesses grew larger, financial institutions developed, and modern banking and investment systems emerged. Another major impact was the rise of modern transportation and communication. Railways, steamships, and later automobiles connected cities, countries, and continents. Goods, people, and information could move faster than ever before. This connectivity helped create global markets and strengthened international relationships. The Industrial Revolution played a key role in shaping modern social structures. New social classes emerged, including the industrial working class and the middle class. Over time, demands for fairness and equality led to labor rights, education reforms, and democratic movements. Workers gained legal protections, and access to education gradually improved. Urban life also evolved into its modern form. Cities became centers of industry, culture, education, and innovation. Improvements in sanitation, housing, healthcare, and infrastructure raised living standards over time. Modern city planning and public services developed in response to earlier urban problems. The revolution also changed human thinking and values. Ideas about progress, efficiency, time management, and scientific problem solving became central to society. People began to believe that human effort and technology could improve living conditions and shape the future. Despite its benefits, the Industrial Revolution also introduced challenges such as environmental pollution and social inequality. These issues continue to influence modern debates about sustainability and fair economic development. In conclusion, the Industrial Revolution was not just a historical event, it was the beginning of the modern world. It created the systems, technologies, and ideas that define contemporary society. Understanding this foundation helps us better understand how today's world came to be.